Hello, welcome to another installment of my novel, Boston Accent. I'm Mark Mattioli, and Boston Accent is available on Amazon.com. Check it out. We're going to pick up where we left off. We're still reading chapter 5, I believe, of this lengthy book. And once again, my disclaimer is this is book contains a lot of adult subject matter. It's not too bad right now. I'm still in high school, but things will pick up in that department. All right, where were we? Boston Accent. It's the day of our suspension, and Jake calls me and asks me what I'm doing. I tell him nothing, and he asks me to meet him at the corner. 20 minutes later, I'm at the corner. Here comes Jake behind the wheel of his dad's Lincoln. He's got a shit-eating grin on his face, and he says, "Get in." I jump in, and Jake takes a 180 in the road, screeching tires and sending dust in the air as he heads back the way he came. I ask, "Where are we going?" And he says, "Looking for babes." Now we're headed on the winding road back towards Marlin High. Jake increases his speed as we approach a rise in the road that the locals call Whoopee Hill for the sudden drop-off as you crest the hill. There are no other cars on this road that sees very little traffic as Jake gets the car up to 80 miles an hour. Neither one of us is wearing a seatbelt as we hit the hill and the Lincoln is launched into the air. As the car left the ground, I felt myself go up in the air like I was in a zero-gravity chamber. As the car landed back on the street, I was propelled backwards and eventually upside down into the back seat. As I was landing on my head, I happened to look out the window at a house we were in front of as one of the rear hubcaps came off and shot over the garage. Jake, just shy of his 16th birthday, with no driver's license and little or no driving experience, had panicked as the Lincoln left the ground, and he had locked the brakes in mid-flight. When the Lincoln landed, we heard a screech of brakes that would wake the dead. As I climbed back into the front seat, Jake accelerated again to escape from the scene of the crime. I'm trying to tell him that he needs to go back to retrieve the hubcap, which he has no idea has come off the car. We pull over to confirm it, and yes, it's gone. Jake decides it's too soon to go back after all the racket he made, so we continue on with our plans to cruise the high school. Later that afternoon, we head home the same way after striking out of the school, and when we get to Whoopee Hill, we see the fresh tracks of rubber but no hubcap. I tell Jake I saw it go in the backyard, but he is reluctant to look. When Jake's mom and dad return from vacation, Jake spots the missing hubcap before he even gets in the house. Jake got grounded and had to replace the hubcap, which cost $90 new. He did what any other kid in that position would do. He swiped it off another Lincoln. Pause here. I gotta get this coffee going. Well, that's good. When I was running around with Phil, whom Jake had a problem with, we had a mutual friend our age named Brad Fredrickson. Brad had a small circle of friends, but for the most part was very antisocial, anti-school, pretty much anti-everything. But if he trusted you as a friend, he could be a lot of fun to hang out with. Brad also had a younger brother named Jerry, who played hockey with Jake, and took Jake's place in net when Jake stopped playing. Jerry went on to be a commercial airline pilot, and his usual run was round-trip Boston to L.A. The day of 9/11, Jerry had another pilot, a friend of his, cover his shift so he could be home for his daughter's birthday. To this day, Jerry won't talk about that fateful day that spared his life but took his friends. One day, Phil and I are over at Brad's house, and he shows us this homemade bazooka he has made. Brad was big into weapons and talked constantly about them and war. The bazooka was made from 6 tin cans bound together with duct tape. You would cut both ends out of every can except for the can on the end. That can had several small holes in the back of it where it attached to the next can in line. The outside of the can had one small hole in the center where you sprayed in lighter fluid. Your ammo was a tennis ball that fit snug in the cans, pushed all the way in up against the fuel can. You spray in your fuel, wait a minute for it to vaporize, then aim it at your target while you held the match up to the fill hole. It usually took 2 people to fire it, as the aimer really had to hold on when it went off. The sound it made would scare the crap out of you, and the power behind the tennis ball would do some damage if it hit you. That day I saw Brad get shot in the stomach at close range, and he ended up with a huge welt on his stomach. Well, naturally, I had to go home and make one and show it off to the point that in a week, every kid in my neighborhood had one, and we're having bazooka wars. One day I formed an assassin squad, and several of us hid in the woods and waited for the paperboy to ride by so we could ambush him. As he rode by, one by one, the bazookas went off with the tennis balls flying at him at a high velocity. The first shot taking his ball cap right off his head as he dove off his bike, leaving it laying in the street. He ran and jumped over a neighbor's stone wall and hid while we laughed so hard we cried. Oh, by the way, the paperboy was my old enemy from the schoolyard, Robbie. Once again, this would not be our last confrontation, but it was another victory for moi. During the mid-70s, the act of streaking was making the headlines. Phil thought this was the greatest message a person could send to the establishment in the form of, "I'm going naked in public, and you can't stop me." I thought it rather ironic that Phil was spending so much time plotting where in public he could run naked when he was one of the few male friends I had that was still a virgin. I was thinking that he didn't have his priorities straight, but as long as he didn't ask me to join him, I would go along for the laugh. Phil ended up streaking at least 3 times that I know of, 2 of which I was witness to. The first time was at a local mall during a boat show, with 6 of us jammed in the car to witness his ballsy act. No pun intended. I had lent Phil a ski mask my mom had needed for me, and I'd drawn on his chest a giant eye and wrote under it, "Eye of the Devil." Phil's additional wardrobe included a pair of sneakers, a belt, and a cape. A cape he had taken from his little brother's Halloween costume. We dropped him off at the far back corner of the mall, and we waited for him at the main entrance. His route would take him from the back corner entrance up to the main aisle, where he would turn left and run up to the fountain at the center of the mall. He would then take a right, which would lead him to the main entrance in our waiting getaway car. He was supposed to do this in a full sprint. Should any security guard try to stop him, he would run right over them, or if it came to it, punch them. Phil was in a really good shape for running cross-country at school and lifting weights. Anyone trying to stop him would have their hands full. So here we are, parked at the main entrance. Our adrenaline is flowing, and all 5 of us have our eyes fixed on the front doors and as far into the mall as we can see. Pedestrians are staring at us because we're parked in a no parking area in the middle of a crosswalk. But with 5 of us in the car, no one challenges us. One guy in the car has a stopwatch, and he's been timing Phil. He says he's late, that we should see him by now. One guy gets out of the car and goes in the entrance to find him. He's gone less than a minute, and he runs back to the car yelling, "He's coming." Just then we see Phil come into view, and he's walking casually towards the exit, taking time to wave to the cheers of his supporters. As he reaches the exit door, I'm out of the car holding the door open and yelling, "Come on, we have to get out of here." Only then does he sprint and jump in the car. When we asked why he was walking, he tells us that only a few people were reacting to him, and that most people couldn't see him because the boats from the show were in the way. Once he got to the fountain, he decided to walk. Now Phil's in the back seat, and he's still bare-ass. He decides he's not done for the night, and he asks us to stop by a department store that's on the way. It's been dark for about an hour, but the store parking lot is lit up like daylight. We pull up in front of the store and tell Phil, "You're not going in there, it's a dead end. You go to jail for sure." So Phil promises he's not going in as he exits the cart and walks up to the front window and starts waving at a woman cashier, who waves back and yells, "Streaker!" Now everyone at the front of the store is looking at him, and surprisingly, many are waving back. I don't know if the same act would receive the same reaction today. We get Phil back in the car, and we call it a night. Phil was to streak one more time, and he used what some would call really bad judgment. He got a little too overconfident with his success and decided to streak through the local hockey rink, wearing nothing but sneakers, a helmet, and carrying a hockey stick. No one stopped him, but the problem was that his family was very involved in hockey, and this was their home rink. Phil had played with his brother, and two of his cousins still played at this rink. On this fateful day, his brother was on the ice, his mother was in the stands, and his father was announcing the game. Everyone in the rink saw him that day. It wasn't like the boat show, and his parents were so furious they came close to throwing him out of the house. Phil would somehow last 2 more years in that house before moving to California. In the summer of 1975, before I headed off to college, another new family moved into our neighborhood. They consisted of a newly married man, his 2 teenagers from his first marriage, and his stepmother. The teens consisted of a 17-year-old boy named Brett and his 15-year-old sister, Kate. They had lived half their life in Southern California and half in Massachusetts. Brett was a really good drummer. We became instant friends. We put more than one band together over the years. Kate looked like she had just walked off the beach in Malibu with a long blonde hair and golden tan. They were both tall like their dad, with Brett coming in at 6'3" and Kate at 5'11". It didn't take long for the house to be the gathering spot for my friends, and it didn't take long for me to develop a romantic relationship with Kate. It was never my intention to date her. My main interest was making music with her brother. But one night out of the blue, she showed up at my house while I was babysitting my brother and sister. I asked her, "What are you doing here? Your brother's not here." She said, "I'm looking for you." And she threw her arms around me and started to kiss me. I could smell from her breath that she had been drinking, and she said a car full of her girlfriends had just dropped her off. I asked her, "Why me?" And she said, "Because, unlike most guys, I had ignored her and shown no interest, and that caught her attention." My brother and sister were in bed, and my grandfather was down south visiting family, so I escorted Kate downstairs to my grandfather's apartment and right to his bed. Kate was very submissive and lacking experience. For the most part, she just lay back and let me do all the work. I didn't have a problem with that. She was a beautiful girl. My issue was how her brother was going to react. I told her I wasn't comfortable having a relationship with her when her brother and I were going to put a band together. She got pissed off and said I should have told her that before I slept with her. And I told her, "You're right, I should have." Kate went home mad that night, but not discouraged. She showed up drunk again at Patrice's house when I was babysitting. She asked to use the bathroom and came out naked. I took her in the kitchen and had her lay on the kitchen table. Once again, she had little or no movement, and when I was finished, I asked her to leave before Patrice came home. She didn't get mad this time. She seemed okay with it. And Patrice, sorry, I forgot to wash that table. Right before I went off to college, my friends threw me a going-away party, and I got pretty hammered. I woke up naked on a pool table I woke up naked on a pool table in Brett's house with Kate naked next to me. I found out later that Brett had come downstairs and found us like that. The secret was out. We made it a couple more times when I came home from college for the holidays, but we were quickly losing what little interest we had in each other. We moved on with the understanding we would always remain close friends. Brett never brought up my relationship with his sister, but I sensed he was more comfortable with us apart than together. All right, that's the end of chapter 5, and we're gonna end it right there. Call it quits. Pick it up tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be starting with chapter 6, college. And let me tell you, I've got some stories in here. All right. Once again, we're reading Boston Accent. My name is Mark Mattioli. This book is available on Amazon.com, and I'll see you soon. Ciao.